be something that takes too much effect since there are no fairy type attacks on Michael Zhang's team, but you know that then this Garchomp actually doesn't have a way to protect itself. We are going to see one fairy type hit the field though as we get into the first game. It's going to be the Mega Floette for Justin Knox alongside that Kleavor, and for Michael, it's the Hisuian Arcanine and Corviknight.
Kleavor in a pretty threatening spot here. You can either get a big Stone Axe off, do a lot of damage to this Arcanine, set up those Stealth Rocks, such that if you hit the Arcanine with the Stone Axe, you probably take it down very low. If Arcanine swaps out, it can't come back in without being knocked out by those Stealth Rocks. So a little bit of a precarious spot for Arcanine, especially considering this Choice Scarf Kleavor and the Floette should be outspeeding it, potentially able to double up on it and knock it out.
There at least is one way that you can get around the natural speed order of things, and that would be with something like extreme speed. If you know that this Arcanine might have to sacrifice itself in this game, at least you can guarantee some damage now, and then see if you can try to follow up with something later. You know that this Corviknight's in a pretty good position, though. There are not really many ways that you're going to be able to deal with this immediately. Mega Floette, though, still a very powerful Pokemon with that Fairy Aura.
Especially with the Light of Ruin, that is the attack that this Floette is carrying. So if it is opting to go for a double up, Light of Ruin could make up a lot of damage here.
A Protect from this Arcanine is going to keep it safe from a Stone Axe, and that's also going to negate the secondary effect of it. So no Stealth Rock setup on this turn, as Floette is going to let a Dazzling Gleam rip. Corviknight with that Steel typing is going to help it take that Dazzling Gleam just a little bit better, but you gotta worry now about what's coming next. Corviknight set Tailwind. This Hisuian Arcanine ready to rock.
Great Tailwind here. Now Arcanine threatens a KO into the Kleavor with the Head Smash. Of course, being a Bug-type Pokemon doesn't want to see those Rock-type moves coming its way. Floette also pretty heavily threatened by Iron Head from this Corviknight. Get a little bit of damage on it, which could be important, but Floette really doesn't want to be taking that attack.
It's going to switch out as Garchomp now comes in to take its place. That will fare a little bit better, but the Head Smash is going to be an accurate move this time around. Gets the one-hit knockout into the Kleavor, and no Stealth Rocks set up in the game.
Yeah, no Kleavor, no Stealth Rocks, no recoil because of that Rock Head. And now Iron Head comes through into the Garchomp. That is a lot of damage. This Corviknight is maybe a little bit more offensively trained, because that is some really important chip damage into Garchomp here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the Corviknights that we've seen so far, they've had some type of setup option, bulk up, Iron Defense, something like a Roost to make sure that you can heal up a lot of that damage. But this one is just 2 attacks with that Tailwind and Protect. Iron Head's going to feel great into that Floette if you can make sure that that Corviknight is going to be back in front of it next time.
It is that adamant stat alignment as well, so really investing in offense with this Corviknight. But because you are investing in offense and not investing in defense, you're not carrying that body press. So this King Gambit actually a really strong option into Corviknight. One of the few times we've been able to say that this weekend.
Arcanine, though, will have maybe something in store for that King Gambit a little bit later, but knows that it's under a bit of threat from something like a Sucker Punch from the King Gambit, as well as an Earthquake from the Garchomp. So it's going to get out of dodge here as Corviknight hopes to carve out a new opportunity for this Hisuian Arcanine to come back in and go for a Flare Blitz into that King Gambit later.
Boyfriend into the Garchomp does a lot of damage, but doesn't knock it out, and we see a Rock Slide come through, hoping to get some good damage on Arcanine, break its Focus Sash, and then maybe chip this Corviknight down even lower. But this Garchomp for Michael has hit the field. Earthquake now threatens a KO into Justin's Garchomp, which again cannot protect itself, and King Gambit doesn't really want to take this Earthquake either.
Yeah, you might have to switch it out, but what else can you bring in? It's only going to be that Mega Floette in the back, and that's not a Pokemon that you want to switch in to an Earthquake either. So this King Gambit knows it's got to get something done here, and the Sucker Punch will do the trick to knock out this Corviknight before it can get a chance to move again. Unfortunately, though, with the Tailwind still active, Michael's Garchomp will move first. King Gambit hangs on as the opposing Garchomp falls, but the King Gambit also took a critical hit in the process.
Ooh, that could be important damage there. Another Earthquake would have done the job regardless of that critical hit, but that could be in range for a different attack from one of Michael's Pokemon that could make some of these endgame game plans perhaps a little bit simpler. This Arcanine, of course, though, a Flare Blitz would have been able to do the job regardless. Floette does re-enter the field. Michael's Garchomp does not have that Poison Jab that Justin's does, so the best damaging option into that Floette is going to be the Earthquake. But if you Earthquake, you gotta hit your own Arcanine, so you gotta protect that, and if you protect the Arcanine, maybe you're giving up the chance to make great use of this last turn of Tailwind?
Tailwind's over. Just
It is
expired.
over. Okay, great. So no Tailwind. Now Floette, I guess, is a lot more threatening, depending on how the Garchomp and Floette are trained. If Floette is faster than Garchomp, this is actually not a terrible spot for Justin here. Floette really doesn't want to take a head smash, and I guess it's not going to this turn either.
Head smash can still miss, so maybe you gotta bank on that as the King Gambit tries to go for a sucker punch, potentially into that Arcanine to try to break that sash, but it is just a protect to make sure it's not going to be taking any damage from the Earthquake. This partner Garchomp is letting go. King Gambit falls. Floette now the final Pokemon in this first game for Justin, as it's gonna have to get a lot done right now. Dazzling Gleam is going to do a lot to this Garchomp, but they've often been quite bulky. This one not going to actually be able to save itself from the Dazzling Gleam, but there's still a fourth unrevealed Pokemon in the back that Michael has at full HP.
I think the fourth Pokemon kind of doesn't even matter here. At this point, the Floette isn't bulky enough to take something like a Flare Blitz plus Extreme Speed combination if their Flare Blitz itself doesn't even just knock the Floette out. Because this Arcanine has preserved its Focus Sash, this should be wrapped up for Michael here.
Yeah, and Arcanine's going to resist those attacks anyway because it's a fire type, so it is going to be tough. Frostlass also naturally faster than something like the Floette. Will be able to Mega Evolve here and go for something like a Blizzard or a Shadow Ball. So yeah, I think we really are starting to look at a game number 2, but Michael's still going to play this out as safely as possible to eliminate the risk of a miss. That's going to be a Protect Flare Blitz, knock out this Floette, and we think about game 2.
Even protecting the Frostlass there without Mega Evolving, you're not revealing perhaps the speed interaction between the Floette and the Frostlass. I'm sure Michael knows whether or not the Frostlass should be faster than the Floette, but maybe they're on the off chance that you think Justin's Floette might be extra fast and perhaps could outspeed yours. It's just conserving as much information as you can, which I think is a smart thing to do in this era of open team sheets. But just a really well-played game by Michael there. It felt like he was in the driver's seat the entire time. Once that Tailwind went up, and once the Arcanine was able to get that big head smash off into Kleavor, it opened up so much space for the rest of his Pokemon.
I wonder then if Justin considers bringing the Garchomp at the beginning of the game. Because Garchomp actually has quite a good matchup into most everything except for maybe that Choice Scarf Hydreigon or the Frostlass,
Yeah.
of course. It's just such a tough call to try to figure out what your opponent is going to lead.
It's tough because it doesn't have Protect, right? It's just got the 4 attacks, which means that if you do lead the Garchomp into something like Frostlass or Hydreigon, you're essentially forced to swap it out unless you want to risk losing it. And that can be a little bit of a telegraphed play, so it could be something that Michael could try to capitalize on immediately. It just puts you in the back seat immediately in the games, which isn't necessarily how you want to start out. I like what Justin did with the Garchomp in this first game, because he switched it in front of the Corviknight and the Arcanine, which are probably the 2 things it likes to see the most, maybe the Tyranitar, but it swapped into a positive matchup there and was then able to make a little bit of progress. But if you're leading the Garchomp into Frostlass, that could be disaster right off the bat.
There's also a Whimsicott that could make an appearance. With something like Prankster Tailwind, you would be able to guarantee that speed before your opponent. And so we see that Whimsicott hit the field alongside the Kleavor this time around in game 2, as Michael's going to go back to what worked, Hisuian, Arcanine, and Corviknight.
I like this a lot. Making sure this Kleavor gets an attack off is important here. With the Stone Axe goes through and is able to set up those Stealth Rocks, it can make taking some of those KOs a little bit easier later on. For example, if the Arcanine does swap out and back in again, if Stealth Rocks are up, it will no longer have that Focus Sash, which could make it easier for Justin to take down before it gets too many big attacks off.
Stone Axe is going to hit, though, and that's going to bring this Arcanine right down to that Focus Sash and potentially even just knock it out if this Whimsicott goes for something like a Moonblast here. Let's see the Stealth Rocks, though. Look at them. They're so stealthy. Oh, and it is the Moonblast.
Yeah.
So that's just a knockout onto this Hisuian Arcanine before it gets a chance to do anything major in this game. That was a huge thorn in Justin's side in that first game, eliminated right off the bat.
It's also a huge call out for Justin there, going for a play that kind of hurt him in that first game. He went after that Arcanine immediately as it protected, and Corviknight went for the Tailwind. But with the Whimsicott out there, you knew that the threat of Encore was there. If Protect was selected, you go straight for that Stone Axe, you get the important damage off, and importantly, you set up those Stealth Rocks as well. If Frostlass is in the back for Michael again, it will hit the field and immediately lose 25% of its HP.
And this time around, there's no Tailwind that's been set up on the first turn. So this Kleavor still has that speed advantage with the Choice Scarf. You don't even necessarily need need to set up the Tailwind here for the Whimsicott, as it is also very naturally fast. So no surprise here that the Whimsicott's outspeeding the Garchomp and actually just barely misses the KO. Is that going to be critical here? Garchomp does get a little bit of recovery back for the Citrus Berry, but I think another Stone Axe would have been able to take it out if the Rock Slide didn't connect onto the Cleavor first. This is a problem though. This Corviknight means business. It does have Brave Bird at its disposal. Iron Head will also do the trick, so you're not taking that recoil damage. It's a double KO here. Does Justin have enough in the back in order to take advantage of how low this Garchomp now is with the resources he invested?
It might be difficult. Whimsicott going down without setting up Tailwind means that if Michael's able to get a Tailwind up here, he will have the speed advantage for the remainder of the game. And because this Corviknight still has taken 0 damage, I don't think there's a way for Justin to knock it out on this turn. You would have to rely on something like a Rock Slide flinch to prevent a Tailwind on this coming turn. And with the Corviknight and the Garchomp still threatening a lot of damage from Michael, I think that is like kind of the only way you possibly have a way into this game.
This Corviknight is still going to take a lot. You know, a Fairy or a boosted Moonblast. I was going to say, I don't know about a Light of Ruin here, because that might be asking for a little too much. As the Garchomp is going to protect itself first, you could still hit it with something like a Rock Slide and a Moonblast and deal a significant amount to this Corviknight. Oh, but the Corviknight avoids the attack. I was going to say a secondary effect might be that you just try to flinch it and stop the Tailwind altogether, or even an Iron Head if that's going to be going the way of the Floette. I don't know how much Michael actually ends up needing the Tailwind, but maybe for whatever is in the back, you just want to give yourself a full comfort. And especially when you don't know maybe for sure about the Garchomp speed interactions.
Right.
Nice to know that your Garchomp for sure is faster.
Tailwind there just makes a lot of sense. I think, especially given that Justin's Garchomp does not have Protect, you go straight for this Dragon Claw, take the knockout immediately, and now you've left Justin with just one Pokemon. That critical hit likely mattering a little bit. Oftentimes Garchomp struggles to knock itself out with Dragon Claw in that mirror, but this means Iron Head goes straight into the Floette, comes very close to knocking it out, and it looks like Justin is down to just 30 HP.
And the Dazzling Gleam here is going to pick off the Garchomp, but since this Corviknight is going to have the speed advantage with the Tailwind, this is just a game lock. It's unfortunate for the Cleavor and for Justin in this tournament. Michael Zhang is going to take the second game and take the set.
Yeah, it takes the set, putting him up to 10 wins and giving him a shot at making it that top cut stage of the Indianapolis Regional Championships. Just really well played by Michael here. The way that he built this team, it was really hard for Justin to bring Charizard to this battle. You had Arcanine, you had Garchomp, you had Hydreigon, you had Tyranitar, 4 Pokemon that resist fire, and the Akaberry on your Steel type. But that Charizard is kind of the only thing that was able to deal with Corviknight because Justin just couldn't bring it. The Corviknight kind of had free reign.
There's only one, so the out here is like you have to try to get a double protect to stall out the Tailwind and hope that, you know, for maybe you crit Dazzling Gleam on, I don't even think a crit onto the Corviknight is enough.
No, I don't, unfortunately for Justin, I don't know if there's a way to win this one.
Yeah, the knockoff is going to finish the Floette for good, and Michael Zhang